Hello and welcome back to the Jamie Martin Media YouTube channel. I'm Jamie Martin, and joining me today is Tiago Pereira, who's going to be talking to me about Forest's new Brazilian striker signing, Igor Jesus, who, of course, we have been linked with for quite a while, and negotiations intensified a couple of months ago, and here we are now. He's officially in the Garibaldi Red, and he joins alongside his fellow Botafogo teammate Jair Cunha, and of course now both in the red. But we're here to talk today, and I suppose we can get a note about Jair Cunha as well. But we're here to talk about Igor Jesus. So Tiago, thank you so much for joining me. Great to have you here. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you, Jamie? And thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you here with me. Of course, you're Brazilian. I'm assuming you're in Brazil right now.
Yeah.
Um, and I've followed your Twitter for quite a while. Scout Brazil, please follow him on Twitter if you can. And you've obviously discussed a multitude of South American talent, in particular Brazilian players as well, and you have a good knowledge of Igor Jesus. So, for Forest fans that are kind of wondering, and we've all got a pretty basic understanding, some of it from the Club World Cup, of course, which took place recently, that he had a very good spell at. How would you sort of describe Igor Jesus and kind of discuss his journey into becoming from what we can see on the outside, a very popular member of the Botafogo team?
Yeah, so his journey is quite unorthodox, I would say, because he started out at Curitiba. So Curitiba is a generally mid to low table team in Brazil. They've been out of the first and second division for a while now. The last time they were in the first division, I think it was 2023, if I'm not mistaken. But anyway, he was someone that most people hadn't heard about. He debuted in the second division around here, and he was sold to the UAE to Shabab Al Ali. I think that's the name of the team. So he was someone that was flying quite under the radar. Botafogo is a club that has a quite good scouting report. In the middle of last year, they signed him up to be a backup starter. Sorry, a backup striker actually. And then their starter, which was Chiquinho Soares. Chiquinho was someone very highly rated by Botafogo fans. I think he was the top scorer in the league in 2023. Then Igor Jesus was signed in 2024 to be the backup. Chiquinho got injured. The first game, Igor Jesus came in for Chiquinho Soares in the Brazilian League. The second one, Igor Jesus was a starter in the Libertadores, which is the equivalent of our Champions League. He scored a goal. I think he provided an assist right after that game. It was a knockout game, and just took the country by surprise, and never looked back.
So, of course, it kind of came just by chance, then, really, a little bit sort of luck that his fellow teammate got injured. Obviously, unfortunate for Chiquinho, as you say, to get injured, but it was the start for Igor Jesus that he needed. So that spell in the UAE was just a bit of a sort of a random moment that people maybe refer to now. But what was his season like at Botafogo? Because I've not seen a reception for a player like that, considering they've not been there actually that long. I don't
Yeah.
think I've ever seen a fan base love somebody that much. Why is that?
Yeah, so like Botafogo, right off the bat, last season, was the best season in Botafogo's history. So here in Brazil, as in England, they typically refer to the big six, which are of course Man United, Tottenham, Arsenal, Chelsea, and etc. Here we have the Big 12. So we have 12 clubs that we consider the big ones. Out of the 12, Botafogo was the only one who hadn't won a Copa Libertadores right off the bat. Also, they were the second or third one who hadn't won the Brazilian league the longest. They were the team that, for the past few decades, out of the 12, were doing the worst. They were relegated in 2020, played the second division in 2021, got back in 2022, had a great year in 2023, ended up being the second place in the league. And last year, with Igor Jesus and some other players, Igor Jesus being the main one of them, they had the best season of their lives. They won the Copa Libertadores and the Brazilian League title. That was the second time any team had done that since Pele. So it's basically huge.
So obviously he's played a
Yeah.
massive part in that. because I was looking at some of Botafogo and some things about them, and obviously with a lot of success that they've had, especially recently, they've been through quite a lot of managers, haven't they? They've obviously hired David Ancelotti now, the son of Carlo Ancelotti, their new manager, and I think he's got 2 wins and a draw, if I'm not mistaken, or is it 3 wins now? I can't remember.
No, he
Um,
just started. He debuted. Right.
just started, yeah. So, but they've been through quite a lot of managers, and were all of them completely happy with Igor Jesus then? Is he kind of irreplaceable, or was he at the time irreplaceable in that team?
Yeah, I mean, since he came in, he is irreplaceable. So like when he came in, Arthur Jorge, which is a Portuguese coach, was the manager over there, but he left at the end of this year after he conquered at the end of last year after he conquered the Libertadores and the Brasileirão. But he left because of money. Essentially, he went to the UAE or Qatar or stuff like that. And after that, they went through a bit of managers, really. Honestly, this is kind of the Brazilian culture. There tends to be in many clubs this manager shift very frequently. And also, Botafogo does that quite a lot in John Textor. Botafogo has a weird managing model in which they basically let go of the first semester of the year because we are playing regional championships, just the Libertadores group stage, so they don't focus too much on that and things start to pick up in the second semester.
Okay, that's interesting. So, how would you, on a kind of side note, John Texter is a bit controversial at home at the moment.
How
Obviously, with
about
the whole thing with Crystal Palace, as you know. Um, what would you say about his ownership of Botafogo? Because some people have criticised the moves for both Jair Cunha and Igor Jesus as being somewhat um, breaching some sort of legality within the rules, and potentially that John Texter is moving money between clubs, which is what some of the accusations online have said. Whereas I just see it as two Forest signing two really good talents from South America. So, do you think actually as well that Botafogo got the money they deserved for the two players, or do you think Forest got a good deal?
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't really remember the fee for Igor Jesus, but at least in Brazil, the fee for Igor Jesus hasn't been really questioned. I think that's something that everyone's agreeing that's okay. For Jair Cunha is a bit weirder just because he's going for the same money that Botafogo paid Santos at the beginning of this year. And of course, Jair Cunha was a player coming out of the second division. He played the second division with Santos last year. So it was expected that he would have a bigger value. But what's being told here in Brazil is that John Textor has a really good relationship with Nottingham Forest owner Marianakis. I think that's his name, right?
Mm. Yeah,
And we also had Danilo, which is a quite good player coming in from Nottingham Forest right now. So you can see that there's a relationship there. It's not just about moving money. I think it's about really creating a partnership and moving players between the clubs in a legal and coherent way.
yeah, and as you say, I mean, it does seem quite strange that they would salvage Jair Cunha for the same money. But perhaps there is a heavy sell-on clause
Yeah.
in there somewhere. You would anticipate there's probably a good amount of money coming their way at some point in the future.
Yeah, definitely. And Jair is a really good prospect, so they could make a lot of money with that. So it makes sense.
So obviously both of them good players. Now talking of the way that Forest play, Forest last year incredibly counter-attacking. They played mostly in a 4-3-3. You'll be aware of the kind of striker profile that we've enjoyed more in Chris Wood.
Yeah.
So do you think that Igor Jesus, sorry, can sort of play in that role that Chris Wood plays?
I mean, I think he can play the role that Chris Wood plays. I'm going to be honest here. I follow the Premier League, but the games are not always in a great time here in Brazil. So, I mean, as far as I understand, Chris Wood is more of your traditional big man striker, someone that scores a lot of goals, that has a lot of balls, and etc. Igor Jesus is more of a mobile striker. He's someone that he can contribute a lot of ball. He can make up play. He can hold up the ball in attack. In counter attacks, he's someone that will create a lot of spaces, that kind of stuff.
So Nottingham Forest, of course, you'll know they play a certain way of football. 4-3-3 would be the formation that I'd probably put last year on, or a 4-2-3-1. and counter-attacking football. Of course, they're looking to evolve a little bit this year, maybe just be a bit better in possession. So we'll kind of get a word on that relating to Igor Jesus. But of course, Chris Wood is the striker that has enjoyed the most form at Nottingham Forest in the Premier League era. Would you say that Igor Jesus is similar to Chris Wood, or how would you kind of describe his profile, and how is he on the ball in general?
Yeah, so I mean, to be honest, here I don't follow Forest that much. I follow the Premier League, but games are not always in the best time here in Brazil. Anyway, it seems to me that Chris Wood is more of a traditional striker, kind of a big man, scores a lot of goals. Igor Jesus is quite a different profile, to be honest. So he's someone much more versatile. He's someone that his best abilities are not exactly in scoring a lot of goals. Of course, he's a striker; he has to do that. He does that. He outscores his XG typically, but where he really thrives is in linking up play and creating space for his teammates. He's someone that can hold the ball up the field quite well. So in a counter-attacking team, I think you've probably seen the Botafogo game against PSG in the Club
Yeah.
World Cup. That was a masterclass for Igor Jesus, honestly. His ability to just get the ball in fast transitions, hold it up, and open it up for either the wingers or the midfielders is great. So that's what you should expect with Igor Jesus, and I actually believe that he can play alongside Chris Wood. He hasn't done that part in Botafogo. They never went with a striker duo, but I do know that in the UAE he even played as a winger. So I'm expecting Forest to switch to a maybe two striker scenario in some cases.
Interesting. So they could. Nuno has played a 3-4-3 in the past with Wolves. Um, Potentially something like a 3-5-2 or something like that. You think Forest could look to play with Igor Jesus?
Yeah, yeah. I think when you look at his main abilities, I think he can fit quite well in a scenario like that.
Okay. So obviously for the money they've spent, then, well, I would say that from what you're describing, they've got a good deal. There's been some people quoting that the deal for both players was worth around 30 million euros, which, in my view, if you're going to get a good striker that was he one of the top scorers in the league this season, if not the top scorer?
No, not exactly the top scorer, but one of the best producers.
One of the best producers, okay. And so obviously with that, you would say that you're getting good value for money because even if you just split it down the middle, 15 million euros each for either player, obviously it isn't doesn't quite work like that. That
Yeah.
is a pretty good deal. So why do you think more clubs are kind of turning to South America for their recruitment? Obviously, it's something that you look at heavily in your research. But Forest in particular, they've got scouts over in South America and they're focusing very heavily in the Brazilian part of the continent. Why do you
Yeah,
think
I
that is?
mean, I think that was always done. South America is such a huge talent pool. What happened in the past decade or so was that clubs were starting to look more and more for like players right after Credo, you know? You would see the like of Vinicius Junior, which was signed here at 17, João Pedro, who's currently at Chelsea, also signed here at 17. Of course, they can only go with their 18. But Endrick, Rodrigo, Estevão, now going with Chelsea as well. All of them were signed when they were underage. I think with the Club World Cup and some other events here, the Brazilian League has been much richer in the past few years as well. We became kind of dominant in Latin America, in South America in particular. We have won the last six Libertadores, four of them with only Brazilian teams. So it kind of shows you the kind of level the Brazilian League is getting. The Club World Cup just proved it when Brazilian team could compete with European big houses in the world stage. So I think it's only natural that the teams in Europe, Nottingham Forest, Overhampton Wanderers is not another great example, start to turn to much more ready talent in South America. And I honestly think that's a better approach because when you sign a player that's 17, 18, it's really hard to predict whether it's going to work out. If you sign someone that is like Igor Jesus, 24-year-old, really proven at a bigger stage, I think that's a signing that will give you more, shorter time.
So, what in terms of the ceiling of the player, then, like what sort of potential do you think that Igor Jesus has to grow from his current form? Do you believe that his current form is good enough to play in the Premier League, and that is just that, or do you think that he has the potential to be one of, it'd be very tough to be one of the top strikers in the Premier League, I think. But then again, I don't think many people thought Chris Wood could outscore some of the players that he did. So, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that when he gets into a team that will play more for him, he can. The main thing that Igor Jesus has to improve, honestly, is his goal scoring number. It's not going to jump out when you look at it first. In Brazil, it's not very typical for strikers to score a lot of goals during the league. The last year, top scorer scored 15 goals, for instance, in 38 matches. So I think Igor scored 10. I think that was it. So you can see that he was very near the top there. And the kind of level that he can get, I mean, he's someone that is in discussion for the starting spot for the Brazilian national team. So I think you can see it there.
Hmm. So, so where do most of the goals come from in the Brazilian leagues? Then is it more from the wide areas? Would you say?
Yeah, the Brazilian league is not a league that has that many goals when you compare it to European leagues in general. I think that's mostly, there's a lot of reasons, but for that we can get into it. But um, mostly because of the way the game is played by smaller clubs, especially. They tend to play in low blocks quite often. That's often the case in other leagues, but even big clubs sometimes use that strategy. We have a huge amount of games as well. We have 80 games per season at times, so it's pretty complicated. But the goals tend to be distributed along the team. But the main thing is that there's just not that many goals in the league itself.
Hmm. Obviously, talking of goals with Igor Jesus, how or what scenarios would you say most of his goals come in? Because obviously Forest, not notoriously a team for scoring a lot of set pieces. They improved on them last year, though. I will say, most of their most of their goals, of course, coming from open play, and Chris Wood finishing most of them. But what sort of specific goal scoring scenario would you say that Igor Jesus really excels in?
Definitely counter-attacking. So the Botafogo side last year was, even though they were a dominant side that ended up winning both the Brasileirão and the Libertadores, they were a side that thrived in vertical transitions. They weren't a side that really was looking to dominate the ball and create play um, slowly and etc. Like Flamengo typically does here in Brazil. That's another example. So their team, yes, last year had four really fast, really technical attacking players, Igor Jesus being one of them. So most of his goals, most of the opportunities he also provided for his teammates, his assist numbers are really good for a striker, by the way. They were in counter attack, honestly.
Counter attack. That's good. That's really good because obviously Forest, that is last season was sort of their bread and butter. So finally, then I'll just ask you, what would you rate this signing? If I had to ask you, Thiago, can you put this signing out of 10? And also, if you can give one for Jair Cunha as well, that'd be great. What would you rate these two signings for Nottingham Forest? And any kind of final words you want to say about them?
Yeah, I mean, I think Igor Jesus is an 8 or 9, stuff like that, and Jair Cunha probably a 7 or 8. Jair Cunha probably has an even higher ceiling, to be honest, just because he's so young and he's crazy technical for his size and for the position he plays in. But I think Igor Jesus is someone that can contribute right away. I'm not sure if he's going to be a starter, but not sure. But I do believe he's going to get a lot of minutes and be able to really help Forest out in the Premier League.
Sorry, finally as well, I want to just ask one more because you mentioned
No
about
problem.
Jair Cunha being super technical. Is there any comparison to his fellow Brazilian in Murillo in terms of the playing style?
Well, Murilo is much more stronger, a bit shorter, and of course he's a left-footed center back. He's someone that is starting to turn eyes in Brazil only recently, really. But I would say that Jair is leaving Brazil more ready for the Premier League than Murilo was. I didn't think Murilo was going to become the player he became in the Premier League. I was quite surprised with him. I expected more of Jair.
Yeah, this is interesting because when I coach with a Brazilian guy called Greg, and we were in the office, and I said to him, I said, "Oh, you know a really good Brazilian player, Greg Murillo," and he goes, "No, he's terrible." I was like, "How can you think that? Is this a common Brazilian thing?" Because I know that he didn't have a great game against Argentina when you
Yeah.
played. in the national team. And in my opinion, I think that was the wrong game to introduce him. I think there
Yeah.
was mismanagement there from was it Dorival at the time that was
Yes.
manager.
Exactly.
I think he was completely wrong to put Murillo in that position. But is there a general sort of overview that people in Brazil just don't really rate Murillo as much?
Yeah, I mean, it's not that many people in Brazil watch the Premier League, especially Nottingham Forest or one side that is not at the very top of the table. And yeah, I think that was the only game Murilo played for the national team. So
Yeah,
it left a bad impression, not only on him, but also João Gomes, who's currently at Wolverhampton, was a star in that game. Even Rafinha, which is a star for Barcelona, is being criticized a lot. Joelinton at Newcastle, all of those players were very criticized. And it wasn't just about putting Murilo in a bad spot there, but the way that Dorival set up the team at that game, because Argentina's midfield is really good with McAllister, with Enzo Fernandes, all those players, and he went with a 4-2-4 formation with just Joe Ellington and João Gomes at the middle. So, I mean, the defense was overwhelmed, you know.
yeah, it was a bad decision. I remember seeing the game and being like, "Oh Jesus Christ, we need to get Murillo out of Brazil pretty quick." Yeah, nervy stuff. But anyway, no, I really appreciate you coming on and joining me as well. If you want to just give yourself a shout out, kind of tell people a bit about what you do on Twitter and in general with your work.
Yeah, of course. So yeah, I'm at Twitter at Scout Brazil underline. You can see the name here below my actual name. So I try to just provide some overview of Brazilian players and South American players in general to an international audience. So I watch a lot of games and just try to predict or point out to you what's going to be the next star in the Premier League or in Europe.
Well, I don't know about you that is watching, but I'm a massive fan of
Awesome.
Brazilian talent and players that are coming through. And when I do get the chance to watch Brazilian football, which is difficult because our time zones are, we're at like super like crazy ends of the spectrum. You're how many hours behind British time are you?
I think it's 4 hours behind. I think that's it. Can you hear me?
Sorry, I've got you. I've got you back now. Sorry.
Okay.
How many hours behind British time are you?
I think it's 4 hours, 4 or 3 hours. Not exactly sure right now, but it's 80-30 right now in Brazil.
It's 8:30. Oh my god, it's 9:30 for me at the moment. We're +9 over here in Australia, so crazy different time zones. But thank you so much for taking your time, especially early in the morning as well, to come and join me. It's been a real pleasure talking to you. Looking forward to seeing more of your work as well. I'll be keeping tune, and hopefully, at some point, you'll be unearthing some gems, and Forest will be buying them. Let's hope. So, thank you so much for joining me. If you enjoyed this episode, please come and follow and subscribe. Do your thing. And leave a comment as well. We're really keen to know what you think of Igor Jesus and Jair Cunha as well. Let us know. Take care. And we'll see you for the next one. See you soon.